I came across a line once from Edmund Burke, who was the Quartermaster General of the British Armed Forces a long time back. He said that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil was for good men to do nothing. In 1945, after the most horrific conflict in human history, that is, World War II, an attempt was made. An attempt was made to make a global order. But, like everyone's New Year's resolution, it failed halfway. I speak of the United Nations, a body born out of necessity, with an organization that today reflects all that is wrong with the world. I will start that with a particular person's speech. A person who, let's be fair, does not really even have the mandate to speak at the UNGA and to represent the 220 million plus Pakistanis which neighbour the Republic of India. I speak of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Yesterday morning, I woke up, it was a holiday, so I went on YouTube and searched comedy videos, start the day with a bit of laughter to set a good tone for the day. I came across Shehbaz Sharif's General Assembly speech, so I clicked upon it. 25 minutes later, I fell out of my chair laughing. Why might that be? Why would I laugh at the speech of a sitting head of government? Well, firstly, because when I hear a speech, whether that be the speech of a second grader or that be the speech of Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, one must be active enough to separate what is nonsensical, untrue, and essentially politics in a nutshell, from what is true, from what is actionable, and from what is relevant. In this speech, that becomes nigh impossible, firstly because the speech is utter nonsense. Now, the speech starts with an Arabic saying, from what I would presume is the Quran, correct me if I'm wrong, and that was where the reasonableness of the speech ended. He then claimed, rightly in a sense, that conflicts around the world were increasing. Why, yes sir, because you're propagating most of them. Then he went to how international humanitarian law is being violated and how humanitarian crises is expanding around the world. Why, yes sir, an example, a prime example of that would be in how you bombed civilians in Balochistan with your own Air Force. Then he went to how terrorism is a very potent threat, and that is because you are the primary instigator of terrorism. Little reality check, sir. Then he proceeded to how Pakistani foreign policy revolves around and is grounded in peace, constructive dialogue, and diplomacy. I mean, if anybody who has no idea on how the world works looks at the speech, he might think that, wow, Pakistan's foreign policy must have been made by Otto von Bismarck and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, working in cohesion, right? Pakistan's foreign policy actually works by bending a knee to whoever gives them the most money, previously being the United States, and currently being the People's Republic of China. And that is going to continue for the near future. Then he quoted himself, as all incompetent leaders mostly do. He spoke about how last year he had said that Pakistan, the country, would strike out in the face of threats, and how they did so this year, in May, how his words proved true. He spoke about how the enemy came shrouded in arrogance, the enemy being referred to in this case being us, the Republic of India. How we came shrouded in arrogance, unprovoked, without any reason, conveniently ignoring the fact that his country was the instigator of the resistance front, which caused terrorist attacks and killing dozens of people in the Pahalgam region in late April. And on how Pakistan, the country, defended that very resistance front in the United Nations Security Council just a couple of days later. So fine, lie number one, just out of a smorgasbord of lies. Then he proceeded to how Pakistan, under the leadership of failed Marshal Syed Asif Munir, had struck back at the Indian forces and delivered a bloody nose with the utmost professionalism, bravery, and acumen. The Pakistani Field Marshal, by the way, who promoted himself to that rank, was sitting in a bunker, afraid for his life, during Operation Sindoor. Now, if we look at all of this from a backdrop, we see that First of all, we should not be laughing at this. We should be clapping. And why should we be clapping? Because this is an excellent example, and this is for any budding authors out there, on how to write fiction. If you want to know how to write things that completely are untrue and do not exist, well then, sirs, look at this speech. Shehbaz Sharif and his council of ministers rival J.R.R. Tolkien, J.K. Rowling, and George R.R. Martin in their literary skills, assuredly. First time in human history here, we are seeing stand-up comedy happening at the United Nations, and therefore I would recommend Indian stand-up comedians to learn from the Honourable Shameless Sharif. As he proceeded, he spoke of His Highness President Donald John Trump, 45th President of the United States of America, and currently 47th. He spoke of how, despite Pakistan having the upper hand, they decided to support the weak and helpless India by letting them have a ceasefire. The actual events were Pakistan begged for a ceasefire, but who cares about reality? And then he claimed about how Donald John Trump, oh yes, the modern day Bismarck, swept in and brokered peace between the two warring states, like how your mother separates two twins who are trying to claw at each other's throats, and how he is the quintessential example of how modern politics and diplomacy should run, and how Pakistan supported this great leader to their limited means by offering him but a Nobel Peace Prize nomination, which is worth about as much as me saying I'm the president of India. Absolutely nothing currently. As he continued, he spoke about how Pakistan's aggression was righteous, as protected by Article 51 of the UN Charter. Now, obviously, Pakistan also ignores this UN Charter as it fits them. Article 51 of the UN Charter states that a country reserves the right to defend itself during times of natural crisis and invasion from other countries. Now note, what India did wasn't invasion. It wasn't even a provocation of war. Provocations of war occur when sovereign territory, when sovereign parts of a country are attacked. India responded to terrorists who had aggressed by attacking Pahalgam. So if you want to get into the legal minuteness or minuteness of the matter, then I recommend the Pakistani Parliament and the Pakistani Cabinet of Ministers to read up a bit on international law. Then he spoke of the Indus Water Treaty and how India holding it in abeyance was absolutely illegal and was unacceptable, and Pakistan would respond in kind to protect the waters of the Indus Water Treaty, a treaty which is absolutely lopsided in Pakistan's favour for God knows what reason, and which India has now had the good sense to keep in abeyance and hopefully suspend it in the future through appropriate legal means, thus safeguarding India's water sovereignty. There is another line, that hypocrisy is the audacity to preach integrity from a den of corruption. And this is what Pakistan is doing. The Pakistani Prime Minister also claimed that they were the victims of terrorism and they were the bulwark of counter-terrorism. This country, by the way, is currently under the Financial Action Task Force, the global watchdog's grey list, because it has not responded to terrorists in its area and because it runs terrorists like an industrial base, producing them in large numbers and exporting them around the world. And the Pakistani PM also claimed that his country had been affected the most by terrorism, with over $150 billion of economic loss and 90,000 people having been killed at the hands of terrorists. The numbers are very unverifiable, but Pakistan has brought this upon itself. When you as a country facilitate terrorist groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed, like the Lashkar-e-Toiba, and like the Pakistani Taliban, then do you really expect that particular snake to not bite you back when it finally realizes that it cannot attack anything else? This is, incidentally, very acquainted to this particular allegory. Imagine you are looking at a house. This is your house. Inside you have a very valuable diamond. And there is a robber outside, and that robber really wants that diamond. But every single time he goes into that house, breaks in to get that diamond, he either gets himself bitten by a dog or he stubs his toe on the way out. Now imagine that particular diamond to be Kashmir, that house being India, that robber being Pakistan and you being the Indian public. Pakistan claims that the terrorist casualties which it suffered due to it breeding terrorists in order to gain back Pakistan are an example of sacrifices that it committed to counter global counter-terrorism. At this point, it does not feel like I am listening to a speech from a respected head of state, but from someone who is not in the right mind on how his country or global systems work. And to quote Abraham Lincoln, one must have a great memory to be a successful liar. But Shehbaz Sharif is neither a successful liar, nor is he the head of a country which is capable of telling the truth. So I implore the Honourable Prime Minister, who is probably not going to be able to look at this video, firstly because he has banned Wikipedia and probably does not engage in any form of productive conversation, but also because of the fact that if countries like Pakistan are allowed to have a free run due to leaders like Donald Trump who facilitate them for haphazard reasons, this world is not going anywhere. The United Nations is already a completely useless body, as showcased by Netanyahu's theatrics, as showcased by Donald Trump's fallacies, and by many world leaders who just use the UNGA podium, which should have been the most important seat in the world, as nothing but a tool of personal use. Thank you. Jai Hind. Stay connected with the news.